My name is Rowan Calder, 36 years old. Louisville still smells like cut grass and wet pavement, like the summer I was 18 and the world tilted under my feet. Back then, my grandfather left me $100,000 with ink that felt like a hand on my shoulder. College, a start, a way forward. I can still see the living room where it vanished. Dad in his recliner, arms crossed. Mom at the window, jaw set, the box fan chewing the heat while I held my University of Louisville acceptance letter and told myself this was the beginning. "We need your inheritance," Dad said, like he was borrowing sugar. "For the family." Philip had a construction plan big enough to swallow us. Mom said it was a sure thing, and they'd pay me back. The sure thing sank in a year. They never did. I packed a duffel that night. Laptop, 2 pairs of jeans, the terror that looks like courage if you don't blink. College became a patchwork. 3 jobs, instant noodles, textbook margins full of equations and promises. Sometimes my bones rang with exhaustion so loudly I couldn't hear my own thoughts. But the one that stayed was simple. No one would get to choose my life again. I clawed to graduation, top of my class. Entry level at a tech startup turned into product management that mattered. I bought a modest 3-bedroom with a yard Dylan could turn into Mars if he wanted to. He's 12 now, all elbows and lunar ambitions, and his laugh makes something in my chest soften I didn't know could. His dad, Travis, didn't work out. I found messages I didn't need to read twice, put his suitcase by the door, and kept the parts of him Dylan needed. A voice on birthdays, weekends we coordinate without drama. Stability is the only miracle I believe in. My parents resurfaced in careful increments, cards that sounded like strangers, then texts that slid from "How are you?" to "How much can you send?" 5,000 for a car repair. 10 for an opportunity with a name like a cloud. I sent some, then stopped. Denise Bailey stepped into my life 5 years ago at a networking event and never left. She's the kind of friend whose advice cuts like clean glass. She set up Dylan's college fund and taught me that no is a complete sentence. When the requests kept coming, she said, "They're using you." And the quiet part of me that still wanted to be a good daughter finally answered, "I know." I wasn't looking for a reunion. I was building the sort of life you can breathe inside. Pizza Fridays, code reviews, a backyard that always needs one more bag of mulch. Then Mom called one Tuesday with a voice I didn't recognize. "It's your father," she said. "His heart. The bank is threatening to take the house. 300,000. We need you to come home." The word home hit like a swing to the ribs. I could see the hallway where the carpet curls, the dent in the baseboard from when Philip practiced his jump shot. It's strange how memory leaves the warmth and the bruise in the same place. "What exactly do you want me to do?" I asked. "Talk to the bank. Help. You're doing so well," she said, and beneath her tremble was that old steel. "We're family." After I hung up, I watched Dylan scribble orbits around a penciled planet and wondered what he would remember about me at 12. That I chose him, that I drew lines, then kept them. I called Denise. She didn't wait for me to finish. "Don't let guilt make your decisions," she said. "If you go, go for closure, not to fix what they keep breaking." I promised myself I'd do exactly that. Then I booked a flight. The house looks smaller now, like time washed it and left the color thin. The porch sags a little. The hydrangeas out front are all leaf, no bloom. Mom opened the door with a practiced worry in her face and pulled me into a hug that didn't quite land. Dad looked older in the way men do when pride and fear are fighting in one body. He tried a smile and it stuck halfway. "We're glad you came," Mom said, ushering me in, already rearranging coasters, as if the living room would find its manners if the table did. Photos lined the hallway, me as a kid with grass-stained knees, Philip hoisting a basketball, the 3 of us by a lake with a fish that might as well be a legend now. The air tasted like brewed coffee and something metallic. Over mugs, Mom ran down the headlines. The bank, the surgery, the numbers that don't care about feelings. Dad kept clearing his throat like he could cough up a solution. "We've been talking to a guy about restructuring," he offered, the word careful. "He knows people at the bank." "What guy?" I asked. "Just a consultant," Mom said, eyes dipping. "It's complicated." The way she held her phone by her elbow like a second heartbeat didn't escape me. She's picked up TikTok lately. Recipes, she says, and little stories. Last week she posted a cinnamon roll that looked like it was auditioning for sainthood. She laughed when I asked why. It's harmless, she said. People like honesty. I remembered how she filmed everything last Christmas. The tree, the neighbor's dog, the way she kept angling for light. Honesty, edited. I asked about Philip. He's working on a new venture, Mom said too quickly. Real estate. Of course he is, I said. He's coming by tomorrow, Dad added, already bracing. We thought maybe we could all sit down, have dinner, talk about the house. There it was. A table, a performance, a script with my lines already penciled in. I felt my jaw set and then unclench. I told myself to remember the hospital forms and the way Dad looked at the floor when I asked about surgery. Not everything is a stage, not every moment is a trap. But I also felt the old prickling at the back of my neck, the sense of a joke I hadn't heard yet. Okay, I said, dinner. I took a breath and let the hallway creak settle around me. Somewhere in this house, a sentence waited inside me like a lit match, the one I'd say when their voices got louder than my own. But for now, I walked into the kitchen and offered to set the table, counting the plates, counting my reasons, counting the ways I would not be dragged back into a life I'd already left. Outside, the evening slid against the windows. Mom propped her phone near the stove. Just for a recipe, she said. Dad rubbed his chest without meaning to, and stared at the unpaid bills stacked like a paper skyline. From the front yard, a kid's bike bell chimed down the street, bright and brief. I stood there with a dish towel over my shoulder and 100 versions of myself in the room, student, mother, daughter, witness, and chose the one who does not run. 6 o'clock, Mom said, too cheerful. Family dinner. 6, I said, matching her smile with one that didn't show my teeth. I nodded like nothing had already started, but in my chest, the air changed. Even the house seemed to lean in to listen. The dinner was set like a truce before a war. By 6, the sun had slanted across the porch, turning dust into gold. Inside, the dining room smelled of roasted chicken and something burning faintly. Hope, maybe. Mom moved between the kitchen and table with the precision of someone staging normalcy. Just like old times, she said too brightly, adjusting the cutlery until it gleamed. Dad sat at the head, his oxygen monitor clipped to his finger. Every soft beep seemed to echo the guilt she wanted me to feel. He's having a good day, Mom murmured, as if that excused everything. I set my phone face down, text from Denise still unread. Breathe first, decide later. Then Philip arrived. Late, of course. He never walked into a room. He entered like he owned the lighting. Slim suit, loud watch, the kind of cologne that tried to announce success. There's my favorite little sister, he said, leaning down to kiss the air near my cheek. Still running the world, huh? Trying to, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Mom fluttered. Let's eat before it gets cold. We bowed our heads for a prayer that felt like a performance. The clatter of forks followed, polite and brittle. Conversation was small talk stretched to its breaking point. Neighbors, the weather, some man from church who'd fallen on hard times. I knew it was preamble, the small lies before the big one. Halfway through, Dad cleared his throat. The sound pulled the air taut. Rowan, he said, voice rough. We need to talk about the house. I set my fork down. I figured. Mom's smile froze midair. We owe $300,000. The bank's final notice came last week. And, Dad said, you're doing well. We were hoping you'd help us. Maybe $200,000, just until we get back on our feet. Just until. The words landed like déjà vu. $200,000, I repeated slowly. That's not a small favor. Mom's tone sharpened. It's the least you can do. You've had every opportunity. College, career, that nice house of yours. We helped you get there. Helped me? I nearly laughed. Philip leaned back, crossing his arms. Come on, sis. You're sitting on a gold mine and we're drowning. Don't be dramatic. Think of it as paying it forward. I stared at him. You mean paying it back for the money you already lost? He blinked, pretending not to hear. Dad's voice deepened. You've always been so selfish. You forget who raised you. I looked at him then, really looked. At the man who'd watched me leave at 18 without a word, who'd signed away my inheritance like it was pocket change. He didn't see a daughter. He saw a wallet with a pulse. I remember exactly who raised me, I said quietly, and what it cost. The silence rippled. Mom leaned forward, eyes cold now. You and that boy of yours live easy while we scrape by. Don't act like you're better than us. Dylan, my hand stilled. Don't bring my son into this. She smirked. Why not? You're both freeloaders living off the family's sacrifices. The word hit so hard I didn't breathe for a second. Freeloaders. The same mouth that once kissed my scraped knees now called my child a burden. I stood slowly, the chair legs scraping the floor like a warning. Don't you ever say his name again. Dad slammed his palm on the table. Show some respect. Respect? I asked, my voice low. You took my future, my money, my trust, and now you want my earnings? You don't get to ask for respect. You burned that right. Philip's smirk faltered. You always make everything about you. You mean I stopped letting it be about you, I said. Mom's eyes narrowed. We're your family, Rowan. You owe us. You'd let your father die homeless? I looked at her, feeling the last bit of fear burn away. You built this. You and Philip, and I'm not paying for the wreckage. Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad's face reddened. You think you're better than us? I didn't flinch. No, I said, steady. I just stopped being afraid of you. For a moment, nobody spoke. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Then I said it, the sentence that froze the room. The bank will talk to me, not you, starting tonight. Mom blinked. What does that mean? It means this house isn't yours anymore, I said, my voice calm. You wanted my money. You're about to learn what I do with it. I pushed my chair back and walked to the hallway, heart steady. Behind me, Dad called my name, but I didn't stop. Outside, the night air was cool, clean. I dialed Denise before I even reached the car. Say it, she answered. They asked for $200,000, I said, and called me and Dylan freeloaders. Her voice went flat. You're done giving. I am. Then we'll make them pay attention the only way people like that understand, through paperwork. I could almost hear her smile. I sat in the car for a long minute, staring at the house through the windshield. The windows glowed like old memories, warm from the outside, but cold if you stepped in. A notification blinked on my phone. Mom's TikTok post from an hour ago. A photo of the dinner table, captioned, Family Reunion tonight. Pray for us. My pulse slowed, a kind of clarity settling in. I already knew how she'd twist the story next. But I also knew something else. She wouldn't be the only one controlling the narrative this time. The next morning began with noise. Not the soft kind. This was the sharp buzz of my phone lighting up over and over again. Notifications. Dozens of them. At first I thought it was work. Then I saw the words ungrateful daughter trending beside my mother's name. My stomach dropped. I opened the video. Mom sat on the living room couch, hair loose, eyes red, but carefully so. The phone was propped perfectly on the coffee table, catching the family photos behind her. She clutched a tissue in one hand like a prop. Her voice trembled on cue. She's my only daughter, she said. We raised her with love. Now her father's sick, our house is being taken, and she refuses to help us. She told us we weren't worth saving. There was a long, shaky breath. I don't know what I did to deserve this. I guess money changes people. The caption read, Please pray for us. Some children forget their parents when they get rich. 500,000 views. Comment sections full of strangers diagnosing me as cold, greedy, ungrateful. Screenshots of her video plastered across local Facebook groups. A woman I hadn't spoken to since high school messaged, Is this about you? I closed the app. My hands shook, but not from shame, from fury. By noon, a coworker sent a text. Ignore the noise. Anyone who knows you knows better. Still, I felt the humiliation crawl up my throat. Mom hadn't just twisted the truth. She'd rewritten it for an audience hungry for villains. I called Denise. She picked up before the first ring ended. I saw it, she said. Her voice carried that controlled anger only professionals can manage. You okay? Not yet, I said, but I will be. She's gone public, Rowan. Don't fight it emotionally. Fight it legally. I don't want a war. Denise was quiet for a second, then win it quickly. Within hours, she had the plan. Buy the house before the bank auctioned it off. Strip my parents of their leverage. Reclaim what they'd used to manipulate me since I was 18. By evening, I sat across from Laura Chang, a real estate attorney. Denise trusted with her life. Laura was brisk, precise, and uninterested in sentiment. Your parents defaulted 3 months ago, she explained, sliding a document across the desk. The bank is preparing foreclosure. If you purchase directly, you can settle the debt and become the legal owner. How fast? I asked. 2 weeks, she said. Cash or partial loan. You have the assets. I nodded, a cold clarity replacing the ache in my chest. Do it. Laura glanced at me over her glasses. You sure this isn't revenge? No, I said. It's the boundary they refuse to hear. That night, I sat on my hotel balcony, watching Louisville's skyline flicker like a circuit board. I thought of Dylan at home with the neighbor, probably playing video games, safe, unaware that his mother was about to buy the house she once ran away from. The irony wasn't lost on me. Denise called. You'll sleep better when the papers are signed, she said. I don't think I'll sleep better, I said, but I'll finally stop shaking. 2 weeks later, I signed my name at the bank's polished counter. The pen felt heavier than it should. The clerk smiled as if it were just another transaction. For me, it was closure carved into paper. I owned the house. Every creak, every dented wall, every memory, mine now. Laura drafted the next step, a formal rental agreement for my parents. They could stay if they repaid the $300,000 with interest within 5 years. If they refused, they'd have 30 days to vacate. It wasn't cruelty. It was fairness measured to the decimal. And I added one clause of my own. They were to remove any online content defaming me. Any violation would void their right to remain. When the notice was delivered, Mom didn't call immediately. It took her 3 hours to find the words. The phone rang as I was packing to return home. I answered. You think you can control us now? She spat, her voice jagged. You buy one house and suddenly you're queen of the world? I didn't buy it to control you, I said. I bought it because you turned my name into a headline. You're heartless. I'm consistent, I replied. You'll regret this, she hissed. Maybe, I said, but at least the regret will be mine. She hung up, the silence after her voice a strange relief. Philip texted an hour later. You really did it. You're ruthless. I stared at the words, then typed back. You taught me how to be. Then I deleted the message before sending it. That night, I lay in bed with the paperwork beside me. I didn't feel triumphant, just steady. The house that once trapped me would now fund Dylan's future. Outside my hotel window, rain streaked down the glass. Each drop caught the city's lights and fractured them into small pieces of truth. Some families heal, some don't. But I'd learned something that no viral video could take away. Boundaries don't destroy love. They reveal whoever had any to begin with. Tomorrow I'd drive by the house one last time, then head home. I didn't know if they'd sign the contract or pack their boxes. I just knew I'd finally drawn a line deep enough that no one could pretend not to see it. A week later, Laura called. They're refusing to sign, she said, voice calm but clipped. They're claiming they don't owe you anything and that you're exploiting them. I'm filing eviction papers tomorrow. I didn't even sigh. I'd been expecting it. The Calder family motto had always been deny, delay, deflect. Do it, I said. No more warnings. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table of my rented apartment and stared at the contract still open on my laptop screen, the one that could have saved them if pride hadn't been their religion. My phone buzzed again, a string of texts from Mom. Eleanor, you're tearing this family apart. Eleanor, you'll never forgive yourself when your father dies in the street. Eleanor, money has turned you into a monster. Then from Dad, Kenneth, you'll regret this, Rowan. And finally from Philip, Philip, enjoy your empty house, homeowner. I didn't reply. I saved the messages and forwarded them to Laura for documentation, evidence of hostility. That night, Dylan and I had pizza on the couch, extra cheese, movie paused halfway through because he wanted to show me his new science project. It's about gravity, he said proudly. If you drop something heavy, it always falls the same speed as something small. I smiled. So you're saying weight doesn't make you fall faster? Exactly, he grinned. It's just gravity. I stared at him, struck by the simplicity of it. How much I'd let their weight drag me down all these years, when I could have just let go. I kissed his forehead. Smart kid. The court date came 2 weeks later. I didn't attend. Laura handled it while I stayed in Louisville for work, pretending normal. She called afterward. It's done, she said. 30 days to vacate. Sheriff's notice already served. How did they take it? Philip tried to argue on their behalf, she said dryly. Didn't go well. He mumbled something about loyalty and family, then left before it was over. I thanked her and hung up. That night, rain came hard. I drove to the house, parking across the street. Their living room light still burned. Through the window, I could see Mom pacing, phone pressed to her ear, no doubt spinning a new story for whoever would listen. Dad sat hunched on the couch, oxygen tube in place, face pale and exhausted. I almost felt pity. Almost. They'd chosen pride over peace every time. This was just the bill coming due. A month later, Laura texted, They're gone. House left a mess, but gone. I flew out the next morning to see it. The front door stuck, swollen from humidity. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner, one last attempt to scrub away guilt. Boxes half-packed lined the hall. My old bedroom was unrecognizable, turned into a dumping ground for Philip's failed business ideas. Calder Real Estates, Kentucky Build Co., Phoenix Homes, all defunct. I found one of my childhood trophies buried under the mess, the brass plate scratched but readable. Science fair winner, age 10. The gravity test. I smiled faintly, full circle. I hired a cleaning crew that afternoon, then called a contractor to fix the foundation cracks. Within a week, the house was ready for listing. When the first couple came to see it, a teacher and a paramedic with 2 toddlers, they smiled at the backyard, the creaky porch, the same space that once felt like a trap. "It's perfect," the woman said, eyes shining. "Feels like a home." And for the first time in years, I agreed. The rent money would cover the small loan I'd taken and feed into Dylan's college fund. It wasn't revenge. It was redemption turned practical. I didn't tell my parents I'd found tenants. They'd learn eventually, probably from someone down the street. I could already imagine Mom's outrage, Dad's silence, Philip's sarcasm. But none of it mattered. The deed had my name. The locks had my key. Weeks passed quietly. Work thrived. Dylan aced his math test. Travis called one evening about a school trip he wanted to contribute to. We talked like people who'd finally stopped bleeding each other dry. One night after Dylan was asleep, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the porch, the soft hum of crickets outside blending with the low static of peace. My phone buzzed, a message from Laura. "Laura, FYI, your father's cardiologist bills are still unpaid. I can settle them from your trust if you wish." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Rowan, do it, but don't tell them who paid." Some debts aren't about money. They're about closing the loop quietly. Later that week, I saw a post from a local news blog. Eleanor Calder spotted working at Greenwood Market. Customers say she's polite but distant. There was a photo, Mom at a cash register, face older, eyes dimmed. Dad wasn't mentioned. Philip had moved back in with them, according to a comment thread below. I didn't read further. Denise met me for coffee that Friday. "You did it," she said simply. "You're free." I nodded, tracing the rim of my cup. Freedom feels strange. It always does when you've carried someone else's weight for too long. Outside, Louisville buzzed. Buses, laughter, a saxophone drifting from a street corner. I felt the quiet shift inside me. Not relief exactly, but space. That night, Dylan and I planted a small maple tree in our backyard. He named it Orbit. "Because it always comes back around," he said. I looked at him, mud on his hands, stars just starting to break through the sky. "Yeah," I whispered. "It does." The past had spun and burned, but we'd come out steady, gravity finally ours to command. Months passed quietly, so quietly that sometimes I'd catch myself waiting for the next explosion, forgetting that peace doesn't need noise to exist. The house on Fairview Street, the one I now owned, had new life in it. The tenants, a young couple named Ruth and Evan, sent me photos of the backyard after they planted wildflowers. "Hope you don't mind," Ruth's text read. "We wanted to bring some color back." I stared at the photo for a long time. The grass looked softer. The old fence was repaired. It looked nothing like the battleground I'd left behind. "Keep them," I replied. "The color suits the place." Dylan thrived. His drawings of rockets evolved into entire blueprints taped to his bedroom wall. He'd talk about propulsion systems like bedtime stories. Sometimes, when I watched him build models at the kitchen table, I thought about legacy, the kind you build from what's left, not what's given. One Friday evening, Denise stopped by with takeout and that knowing look of hers. "You're different," she said, setting down the bags. "Lighter." "I stopped fighting ghosts," I said. "Turns out they don't fight back when you stop feeding them." She grinned. "And the house?" "Rented, profitable, quiet." She leaned in, lowering her voice like she was about to tell me a secret. "Word around town is your mother's TikTok disappeared. Every post, wiped clean." I blinked. "All of it?" "Gone. Someone must have reported her for defamation. Or maybe she realized pity doesn't pay the rent." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired, like justice wasn't supposed to feel this quiet. Later that night, after Dylan went to bed, I sat by the window, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Me, younger, in that same living room where Mom called me a freeloader. I could almost hear her laugh again, that polished sound she used when guests were over. I used to chase it like sunlight through blinds. Now I knew it was only reflection, bright but never warm. A message pinged. It was from Laura. Rowan, thought you should see this. Filed yesterday. Small claims court. Plaintiff, Philip Calder versus Kenneth Calder. Cause, breach of verbal contract, repayment for consulting partnership. Amount claimed, $14,200. For a moment I just stared at it, my brother suing our father. I called Laura. Is this real? I asked. Completely, she said. Public record. Apparently Philip lent your dad money from one of his shell LLCs. He's demanding repayment. Does he even have money to lend? Doubtful. Probably borrowed it himself. I let out a low breath, half a laugh, half disbelief. So it's finally happening. They're turning on each other. Laura hesitated. You want me to keep tabs? No, I said. Let it play out. They made their choices. I'm done being their witness. After the call, I turned off the lamp and watched the shadows of tree branches crawl across the wall. My family had spent years feeding on the illusion that someone else was to blame. Now, without me as the scapegoat, they were devouring each other. The next morning, Dylan and I went hiking in Cherokee Park. The air smelled like rain and cedar. He ran ahead on the trail, calling out facts about gravity and stars. I let him lead. Halfway up the ridge, he stopped and pointed to the skyline. Mom, he said, you can see everything from here. I followed his gaze. The city shimmered below, small, distant, whole. Yeah, I said softly, you really can. We sat on a flat rock, passing a water bottle back and forth, watching the sun dip low. Dylan leaned against me, head warm on my shoulder. Do you ever miss them? He asked suddenly. It took me a moment to answer. Sometimes, I admitted, but I think I miss the idea of them more than the people they became. He nodded, like he understood more than he should. I'm glad we're okay. So am I said. When we got home, the porch light flickered on automatically. The small maple tree we'd planted, Orbit, had grown a few inches, its leaves trembling in the breeze. I knelt to touch the soil around it, still damp from last night's rain. Dylan crouched beside me. Do you think it'll be big someday? Maybe taller than the house, I said, but that'll take time. He grinned. That's okay, we've got time. Inside, I checked my email one last time before bed. Among the usual work threads was one from Laura, just a single sentence. Philip's case was dismissed, lack of evidence. No surprise there. I closed the laptop, exhaled slowly, and felt the last thread between us loosen. Before turning off the light, I looked around our small living room. Piles of Dylan's books, a half-built rocket on the table, a mug Denise had left behind. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. No performance, no pleading, no pretending. I realized something simple and final. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who stays when you stop being convenient. Outside, the wind brushed through Orbit's young branches, the sound soft as forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. For the first time, I slept without dreaming of that old house.